I'm Bee Rooney. I am the field director of the Pasadena for Rent Control and Just Cause Eviction campaign. We are a group of renters and homeowners and Pasadenans striving to bring about better housing scenarios for the people in the city. We are mobilizing across the city in a lot of different ways. During the signature gathering campaign, we were at almost every grocery store in the popular shopping areas and community spaces and parks speaking to people. We're doing that again. We're going across all the neighborhoods in Pasadena, knocking on door after door, especially trying to focus on renters in the city, as well as doing phone calls and texts to all the voters. So that's going to be about 30,000 phone calls, another 30,000 doors. Lots of talking to Pasadenans. Yeah, so this is a grassroots campaign. Our volunteers are the biggest part of this campaign, and we always need more. Since we are trying to talk to almost everybody in the city, we need people to talk to them. So we need folks to go do the walking around town, knocking the doors, speaking to people at their homes, as well as people to do phone calls to the voters and do even just texting. And there is a link on our website. If you'd like to be a volunteer, please sign up. It's at pasadenaforrentcontrol.org.
Bee, as field director for the Pasadena Rent Control campaign, I'd like you to talk about some of your experiences, starting with what first drew you to join the campaign.
Well, I am a renter in Pasadena, and I foresee myself being a renter probably for a long time. And I've been around town enough to have heard a lot of stories from other renters, and a lot of them are pretty similar. And that's the rent is going up, people are getting kicked out, their communities are dissolving and disappearing from the city, and community is something that I hugely believe in, and we can't establish that without having a stable home to start with.
I know you've heard many heart-rending stories about tenants facing eviction. Could you share one or two of the most powerful ones that you encountered?
Yeah, so one of my very direct experiences is the renting scenario for myself. I moved into an apartment with a roommate, just a two-bedroom place. Within a month of living there, we actually found that the complex was listed online for sale. And so we were hoping to be able to stay there for more than a year. But then a few months later, it was sold. They began flipping the place, basically constructing it, and one by one, my neighbors moved out. Since I was the second to last person to move in, we were the second last to move out. But all 12 units, except for the property manager, ended up leaving and moving out. They raised our rent. If we wanted to stay, the rent would have been $500 more than it was previously, and for myself and for most people, a rent increase like that you have to do every month from there on out is not affordable. Additionally, during this construction process, which was about 8 months of my tenancy there, obviously there's the normal disruptions of noise and mess and things, but there was lots of construction dust and particulate in the air. I could feel that effect on my own lungs. Thankfully, I'm pretty healthy or otherwise, so it could have been much worse. And I don't think that the construction teams were really following general safety guidelines. At one point, my door was obstructed. There was scaffolding over my doorway too, with things kind of hanging off. The stairwells were not super accessible. Scenarios like that. And with my time in the Pasadena Tenants Union, I've heard many stories that are very similar and just so many more that are dramatically worse. Another story that has gotten a little bit more public attention, this was about 4 years ago, referred to as the Washington 16. So an apartment complex of 16 units that had a very close relationship with each other, built a strong community, having lived there, some of them for decades. This community spanned generations. There were elderly, grandparents, as well as school-aged children. They basically didn't do anything wrong. They paid their rent on time. They treated the property well. They abided by their contract. And the landlord wanted to do something different. And so they were evicted at no fault, all 16 of them, all 16 of the units, more than 16 people. And their community dissolved. They all had to go a separate way, and very few of them are really in close contact with each other anymore. That was no fault of theirs. The owner just wanted to do something different. They flipped the property again, the rents went up, and I live pretty close by to that, and I noticed that the people moving in there looked very different than the people that were kicked out.